Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So we have the Faithinator back again today. Don't ask, it's a nickname she gave herself when she was younger. Anyway, she wants to make a clock for her house, so that is what we're going to do. And right now I'm just kind of showing her, she wants some glass in the numbers so that we can kind of make it a little stand outish from the rest of the mold, or the rest of the like actual resin piece when it's done. And since we are on a time limit, glitters aren't really going to be an option for us because they're light and they may float when we pour resin, because we are not actually going to let the numbers cure like I typically would first before I do the background. So these are a little bit heavier in weight, and I don't think we should have a problem with them kind of coming out of the numbers once we pour the clear background. Now, as she is going in with the colored glass, and she's going to be using a silver and kind of like a tealish color, I'm going to go ahead and start mixing up the resin. And today we are using Let's Resins resin, and I have found that I really like this. It's a super thin viscosity resin, which I like. Well, I guess not super thin, but it's thin, and I really like it. It's great for like all your molds that have a lot of detail. The bubbles, you don't have to worry about bubbles. Like, it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. And I'm having a great time playing with it. So, as she does this and I mix up the resin, we're kind of going to go through this at a faster speed. I am using the Estoyo, their newest resin mixer today, the one that has the AI timer on it, which is fantastic, and it keeps me from mixing my resin so fast that I incorporate all kinds of crazy bubbles in there like we know that I typically do. Okay, so she's got all the glass in there. Now what we're going to do is we are going to add a little bit of the Rolio Pearl White, which is like a super sparkle type deal, and just so that we have that little bit of shimmer in here. The first thing that we're going to do after we put this in and she's going to mix it up is we're just going to drop some resin into these numbers. Now, the reason for that is I had her put the glass in dry just so we kind of knew how much it was going to take to fill them, and I wanted it like full on glass. I only want a little bit of resin in there, just enough to kind of wet everything and hold them in place. I don't want a lot of empty pockets, of just clear resin. So we do want it kind of compact in there. Now, if you're going to do something like this, I highly recommend you be very careful when you mix the resin into it, because you can scratch the inside of your molds because the glass does have sharp edges on it. And I'm just drizzling in the resin into kind of like where the holes for the numbers are, and then we'll go back and mix it. Don't ask me why I'm doing this instead of having her do it. I don't know. I guess I'm so used to just doing it all that I don't always think about it. And now we're just going to kind of mix up the colors so that it's not just, since she went ahead and put all the silver down first, we don't want just the silver to be seen. So we're going to mix that up and kind of push that resin and get it to coat all of the glass in here. And hopefully we won't get a lot of air bubbles. I mean, there is a chance for it, but I mean, honestly, let's be real, there's a chance for bubbles anytime you do anything. But it's a slightly higher chance on this. Now, where the 3, 6, 9, and 12 are, because of how thin those areas are, we didn't get a whole lot of glass in there. So that could potentially be a problem upon demold, and it's just we'll have to figure out something else for it if it is, because there's not much else you can do. I mean, it's just very tiny, and she put in what she could, but it is what it is. So now that that is pretty much mostly done, I am going to try and add a few pieces here or there to where I know I can shove them in and kind of get a little bit more coverage in those actual words, but it's not going to be much. So we're going to work this in, and then what we're going to do is, instead of letting this cure, which if you have all the time in the world, let it cure first. I recommend it. But because we don't, we're going to go ahead and pour the clear resin down now. And hopefully none of this glass comes floating back up and it doesn't ruin it. So what I'm going to have her do now is, on the opposite side of the clock where there's nothing, start slowly pouring in that resin. I don't want to go too fast because I don't want it to overtake and go into those, those cells where the numbers are, and kind of push that glass and move it around. So we're just going to go here and then just kind of easily move it down along the other part where we need it. Now, I am not filling this mold up. It is going to have a back layer on it, but this is just for kind of this layer. Like, we don't have 3 days to do it. She only has this day to do it. So I'm going to have to do the back layer myself, but she gets to do the fun part. There's not much to the back layer. So now, because we poured it in, just to kind of help it along a little bit, I'm just going to take my little silicone tool here that's kind of like a spatula type ish thing. And I'm just going to get this resin all over the place, cover up these numbers carefully, and just kind of smooth it out and get it a little bit more even, and make sure that we've got full coverage around all the sides and all of that fun stuff. And then I'm going to have her take the silicone tool and go around all of the 90-degree edges and corners and all of that good stuff, and around that little hole in the middle for where the clock parts go, just to make sure that no bubbles have gotten stuck there. And that's it. Then it's time for the fun part. She will be hitting it with the heat gun first, and this is going to do two things. It's going to A, pop any bubbles that have come to the surface, and B, it's also going to thin the resin out a little bit more to let us get a little bit more movement from our alcohol inks when she drops them. And that's what we want. Like, it's a pretty, decent size mold. So we've got a lot of coverage that want this alcohol to kind of spread and go through. So this will just kind of make it, thinned out a little bit more so we can do it. Now, she wasn't really sure how to do this, so I'm just going to drop a few drops in and kind of just give her a basic idea. And this is where she started going crazy. Like, she thought this was the coolest thing in the world, and it really is. Like, I love watching alcohol inks dance and move around and stuff. It is super, super cool to watch. But when you've been doing it for so long, I mean, not that a year is so long, but compared to, this is the first time she's ever done it. This is the first time she's ever seen it. She's actually never seen me work with resin before. So when she did this piece and those outlets, like, that's the first time she's ever been around it, other than seeing my finished or half finished pieces. Like, she's never been here when I was actually working. So just watching her expression and the joy that she got out of it was just, it was really, really great to see and great to be a part of an experience, because it kind of brings you back to, your first times doing it and seeing it and all of that good stuff. So she's kind of got the colors where she wants them for the most part. We did go in and add a few colors where I thought that it needed it. And now I'm trying to show her how to kind of swirl just to get a little bit of movement out of them, just because we don't want just, circles. Want some kind of fluid motion of it. And she kind of got a little scared. She didn't want to mess it up or anything like that, which, I mean, we all go through, right? So I think she did a really good job. She was happy with it pretty much as soon as she dropped the inks, honestly. But I did get her to move them around a little bit. And then just going in with the heat gun again. And this is just one more time to pop any bubbles. Not that there's going to be really any. And just to kind of help get those inks moving and flowing. I mean, we all know that I could have left it like that and it would have moved anyway. But I just kind of wanted to give it some directional pulls in that motion. Okay, so 24 hours later, now it's time for the background. She chose this white mica powder and said this is what she wanted, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm using the same resin again, and I'm using my HTV white mica powder, and I'm just going to mix it up. And I did about, I think it was like 400 mils, somewhere in that general area. And when you use this much mica powder, or mica powder at all, honestly, be careful. You want to mix it in slowly, otherwise, you're going to have a mess going everywhere. And when I mean everywhere, I mean everywhere. Like, it will shoot out and just explode and go all over the place. And plus, we all know we should be wearing proper PPE, but if you're not, you don't want to breathe in those dust particles from the mica powder flying, all over the place. So, back to the video, just making sure that because I use so much that I do mix it in really, really well and I don't have any spots floating up. So I do let it set for a minute just to kind of make sure that it is thoroughly, thoroughly mixed. And if I need to mix it again to get any, unmixed mica in there, I will, but it looks pretty good. I think the design for the alcohol inks looks pretty cool, so I'll be excited to see it, upon demold. And now I'm just going to pour it in. And that's really it. Like, as far as the resin part of it goes, that's it for this. Now, once we demold it, obviously we have a little bit more work to do, but that's it for this. So just scraping it out. Now, it didn't completely fill it. I probably could have used another maybe ounce and a half, but it's good enough. And all I need to do is scrape off the edges with my deburring tool at the end if it's sharp. All right, I did go along all those 90-degree angles and corners with my silicone tool and around the middle, and now just heating it with the heat gun again. This is the first time that I've used this heat gun, guys. This is the one that comes in that Let's Resin starter kit. Oh my God, like I thought I liked my old one that's beat up and resin covered. This one is great. My other one only had one speed on it. This one's got two, which is fantastic, especially if you're doing little things and you just want a little bit. It's fabulous. I love it. I'm so in love with it. All right, 24 hours later, it's time to demold this and let's see what it looks like. One of these days, I'm going to have her come over where she can actually do the demolding process because I feel really, really bad that she doesn't get to do this part. And all right, here we go. I think it turned out really, really, really pretty. Like I love it a lot. Now I'm just going to go in with my deburring tool just real quick, one time over these edges so that nobody gets cut and we get rid of all the sharpness. And that's it. Then we're going to go and do a little fine tuning on this. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't ask her about this. I just did because I had to and I couldn't help myself. And I mean, she would be okay with it. I know she's okay with it. But the numbers don't stand out as much as I would like them to. They kind of get lost behind the color. I think that we should have picked something else for them, something either solid or something, I don't know, a contrasting color or something, because they just get lost and you can't see them. First, though, I'm going to go over the edges and just kind of finish this off with my silver Decocolor paint pen. And this is just going to kind of just add that little bit of extra something to it. Now, it does get a little tricky, and you have to pay attention to how thick you're going to make it because where the numbers are, like the actual numbers and the words, honestly, it comes so close to the edge that you're going to be touching it. But in this instance, it's actually kind of okay because I think what I'm going to do is I want I don't want to cover up the glass. I still want to be able to see the glass. Otherwise, that's just a waste of resources to completely cover it. But I want to put the absolute thinnest of lines around the numbers just to kind of highlight them and make them pop a little bit more so that there's some definition between that background and these numbers so they stand out a little bit more. Now, my fine tip paint pens, they suck. Like, they really do. I can never get them to work right. So I'm just going to take some of the paint that's in there and I'm going to get a micro brush and just kind of overflow the paint pen and make it drip the ink, which isn't hard to do because that seems to be the only way that the color ever comes out of it anymore, is it just drops from the top, not where it's supposed to come out. And then take the micro brush and ever so slightly just kind of kiss the edge of these numbers, just that, like the corner of it, with this micro brush, just to kind of put some distinction in these numbers so that when you look at it, you can see the outline of the numbers and then you can kind of see the glass. And then I started to do that with the words too. But as I was doing it, the words, like the letters are so small that even with a micro brush, I couldn't get the line tiny enough to actually do it. So I decided that for these four, it would actually be better just to go over the entire word in its entirety. And I mean, there's a reason they did it with numbers and words. It was so those words stand out and are different. So I thought, well, I can do the numbers because they're a little bit bigger, a little bit chunkier than the letters are, and do them with the outline, and then just do the words a solid silver cover because quite honestly, there wasn't enough glass in it to begin with. Like, we just couldn't get it in there. So I'm not losing that much by covering them up. So I decided that was the best course of action that still makes them stand out the way that this was designed to do, and we'll get some distinction in those numbers. Now, hindsight, I would have done something completely different with the numbers. Not thinking about it when we were dropping the inks, I really thought that like the glass would just color it enough that it would stand out on its own, but it really didn't. It didn't. And I think that the colors that we picked were just too kind of soft. That teal is very, it's kind of, it's not pastel, but it's a very light color. And then the silver being a light color on its own. Those bright, vivid colors from the alcohol inks behind it just kind of overtake them. So this is where you kind of got to think a little bit more about your color theory and all of that stuff and how these are going to stand out before you do something. But it's fine. It'll be fine. It turns out gorgeous in the end. I really like it a lot. And well, as of right now, when I'm doing this voiceover, she still hasn't had it because I had to let it set for a few days to kind of harden up so that it wouldn't warp on me putting on the back of the clock parts. Like I did it for the video and the final shots, but it needs to set flat so the piece can fully harden so I don't have to worry about it, bending out of shape. So she doesn't have it yet, but I did send her pictures and she liked it. So yeah, there's that. But anyway, all right, so now it's time to put the clock parts together. So if you've never done it before, you get the actual mechanism itself. You get a washer, a nut, or a bolt, or one of them. I don't know what they're called. And you put the backing on through the hole, put in your washer, put your nut on, or your bolt, whichever one it is. I think it's a nut. And then you put the hour hand, the minute hand, and then your second hand. And it does take a little bit of finagling sometimes to get them to pop on right. Now they are super thin, like metal pieces, and you can kind of bend them a little bit if you need them to, like so that they clear the one above or below it. And that's it. Put your battery in and you're good to go. Now, I didn't tighten this down, and you definitely want it tightened it, but because I knew I was going to be taking it apart, I didn't do that right now. I will when I give it to her. And that's a wrap on this one, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I will catch you guys on Tuesday in the next one. Love ya. Bye.